How you guys doing? Uh, Sound and video, everything working okay? John, how you doing? David, um, let me talk about what I'd like to talk about today. And this has to do with r- really screwed up values in terms of priorities and where I think it's important for us to the resources that we have or can have, and having those resources used in making a watch. Hey neighbor, and um, this is because of the journey that we've had with hey Tim, that we've had with the our Etude number two. Now, 99% of the watch, I guess, worked out fine. In fact, looking at it with a this kind of monitor, you can't really see what held us up for so long, and it was a guilloché. And I was looking at this FP Journe watch, and the guilloché is Claude Perry, same as a hobnail, all right, and it was stamped. And I thought, oh man, you got no idea how I wish we had used a stamp, but I'll tell you why in a bit. Now, the part of this dial that I really I like the color. That turned out great. The hour chapter ring, the subdial chapter ring really turned out fantastic. What didn't turn out fantastic and has held up the whole thing is that little center part and the guilloché. Now, when we started the project, we we were looking at we had decided that after we had done Etude number one, which was we didn't realize it at the time, but that was almost perfect. we, you talk about beginner's luck, and we had thought it was rough. We had no idea about rough until we've gone through this. So, so we start to say, now this was the problem was over a year ago. I mean, in other words, that once they got it finally done and we had this color we wanted and had gone through all of this other hijinks to get the guilloché done, they're still screwing around with it out of sheer desperation. I got together two other volunteers and we said, okay, we'll just take. There had been a batch that had been sent to us, and it was just totally unacceptable. One of the things, if you ever do your own watch project, get somebody who will do your quality control. Unfortunately, we have ours is just fantastic, and they looked at it, and it, they say, "Well, what are you looking at?" And I thought, well, let's not get to the point of nitpicking where this is going to be the forever watch, but let's get this done. And so what happened, uh, I had a couple of other guys volunteer to take this latest batch that was rejected to take so we could see it. And when I got it, I said, I think that looks so bad. But then if I looked a little closer, it does. I mean, there's all kinds of clots and stuff like that. But here's the point. There were three options we had when we started this project for the guilloché. One was $100, okay, or 100 Swiss francs. The other was 1,000, and the third was something I think 5,000 per watch just for the guilloché. Well, the first option was something that was called stamped. Uh, my FP Journe chronometre surveying has a stamped guilloché. It's the Clos de Paris. And people said, here's a guy who added, I don't know how much, but to have gold bridges and plates and all of this really everything else about the watch. And the thing of it is that unless somebody had told me that was stamped, I wouldn't know. It's not because I'm half blind, because I'm not, but rather deaf, yeah, but not blind. The 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 thing of it is for guilloché to be unique and really deeply carved and really look great, you can see it in a number of different ones. But there are other ones that you don't even look twice at the dial. That's a nice dial, but it's been stamped, but you don't realize that. What this is where the values come in, or the misplacement or displacement of values. Take your choice. Is when we put so much resources into such in simply what we hope will look like, oh boy, that looks good, that I think we get sort of screwed up. And people were saying, oh, well, FP Jordan's, that looks cheap. It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, it isn't. But and that's when I started thinking, oh, what do we really need to focus on? Let me illustrate this, and then we can talk more. Okay, hang on a second. Let me show you what I'm talking about. When you go to when we went to the guilloché people, uh, we had this is this was one of the patterns they had. This is basically an off-the-shelf pattern. They had a whole bunch of these, and this was one I liked. And I thought, man, I tell you, if we had taken one of these sort of off-the-shelf patterns, we would have not only would we have saved about $900 per watch just on the guilloché, but we would have not in this hellish mess that we've gone through on it over something that is such a minor part. The horology on this watch is amazing. Uh, Agenor went and they uh, Agenor went to a lot of, actually, there was another problem we ran into because there was a slight change made, but they changed it to improve the movement. And they certainly have. The movement on this is fantastic. But now let me show you here. Now, I know you don't want me to hear me bellowing about this for the whole half hour I get. Let me show you one more pattern just to get across the idea. See it? Here's another one. And these patterns, I think, are, this is great patterns. What we had was sort of a lot of this thinging around and so forth. But it just like, I guess what sort of set me off, God, I tell you, getting to be that old guy who are hollering at kids in his yard. The was the fact that people would look at it and say, "Oh, if you use a stamped, it's cheap." It's not. I mean, it's in their little minds that the values are. Oh, if you spend more and you have like a hand done uh, for just a simple pattern, uh, hand engraved, what is it, rose engine done, that suddenly it's worth 10 times as much just for this little patch. That's not where you want to put the extra extra whoomp. You want to put it into the horology. Okay, so this is my point that I wanted to make. Oh, let's see. You got hi Jim, hi Bernie, Dominic. How you doing? Goldfinger, good to see it. Yeah, Tim. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Tim, Michael, hello. Uh, WC90, how are you? Will Bill do the watch review? It's take a look at yesterday's review, video. Okay. Um, Goldfinger again. Let me see. Dominic. Um, the miscut guilloché shouldn't have passed the dial maker's QC. That's another good point. It had to wait to get to our QC. And you see this thing that looked like it gotten, run over by a truck. I agree with that. And this is a thing that you don't want to get hung up. I mean, if you're hung up, the place I think you should spend your time and attention is something within the horology. Um, Even the case, the dial is very important. Don't get me wrong, the dial, but it's not in terms of whether you have a hand carved guilloché. By the way, guilloché means nothing but engraving. And so again, what's more important, the movement and the movement maker and the quality of the movement, or how pretty it is. Well, the prettiness is sort of like, come on, what happened to our values? I don't know if it wasn't in the the high horology, the whole high horology thing. Okay, enough from me. Let's see what you have to say. Hot and muggy in Orlando. Isn't it always hot and muggy in Orlando? I used to live north of there, but we take things for granted. A guilloché dial needs to be fabrication of a dial, which isn't the guilloché's artisan. The more steps, the more the risk of errors in fabrication. Uh, uh, yeah, it's also more expensive. If if it's done right, if you can have if you look at some of these really nice watches with really beautiful guilloché in it and engraving, that's unique. But very little is really unique. This is, I mean, you have the two patterns that we just looked at. Neither one of those is what you'd call, I guess, unique. they're, they're general, I guess, guilloché patterns. And like I really wish we had that done with a stamp versus like that. Ours was done, by the way. I was done with CDC, and it looks like somebody didn't know, or CNC. They didn't know how to work the CNC machine. It's like, oh, geez. Okay, so I guess it's more of a rant, but I do think the people who are put themselves in a position, and these are collectors, and saying, "Oh, well, that one wasn't done by hand, and this one was." What I'd like to do someday is take two of them and mix them up like that and say, "Okay, which is which?" Michael, we got the C team. Uh, yeah, those expectations were. I think the C team will be the next level if they get it right. But here's the thing: is that this is, so they're supposed to have this great reputation. When you do that, you don't have a great reputation anymore. Things start going downhill fast. Hi, Radzia. Anderson Geneve, jumping hour guilloché is something different. Yeah, there are a lot of different ones, but like I said, is that, in watchmaking, where should our focus be? Where are values? That if you end up with values on some little minor thing that sort of messes up the rest of it, I think you're in trouble. Not only that, but as a collector, if that says, oh, well, this one was done by hand and this one was done by a stamp. Okay, Smoky, Smoko, that's when you go through a process, okay, you're just trying to lift it up somewhat. Um, Bessinger, I get a lot of people say, "Oh, you got to get a Bessinger, Bessinger. These are so great." What kind of movement do they have? They've never done their own movement. Most of Roland Murphy's movements are, somebody else's. Um, that's so. So here you have a nice guilloché, and the thing is sticking on a cheap um, Salida or something. So where's the horological value? Now I like Roland Murphy, and he's honest. He really is. Uh, but I don't. I see him as a good guy. I know that Shapiro. There's a lot of talk, but yeah, I don't know if he's even done an original movement. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Um, he used to use how what are they called? You something like uh, use something. See, anyway, he used to use a Langenheim movement when they could sell them. They were called the D something or other, or something or other D 33.1. Okay, use those. It was a great choice. Uh, but he didn't, not the movement, didn't do anything with it. Later, he did some other ones, and the most recent stuff he's been doing has been what was it? La Jus Pereira, I think is who he's going, or Concepto, one of those. But this is what I mean about the misplacement of values. We're stuffing all the values in there, and people who do that think they really know horology. They don't know jack. And I think it's important. Now, of course, I'm sort of cut my my pennies in a twist because of what happened to us. By but still, it's the part. So much of it, like you end up with 99% of the watch is the way you want it right now. But then you have this one little stick 'em in there because I don't know, they have uh, their own quality control is crap. So when you if you're doing that, but we're sort of going to be around like a squeaky door until they get the thing done right. Three of us sacrificed ourselves by taking, one of the bad ones just to see if they were like, and they were exactly as our quality control guy told us. They were just not up to snuff. And I don't know what it's going to take to get it done right. But here's the thing again, going back to the point where it's not about something in the horology we don't like. We got this wonderful horology. Agenor is like probably the best independent movement maker around. I mean, if you want to get a movement uh, other than one of the sort of off the shelf ones, uh, they're the best in the business, and they're recognized as such. Now, this other place used to be recognized as one of the top guilloché. Not anymore. And so it's like, what would you have to deal with? Yeah, I know, Damon. That's what we're. Yeah, I know. He couldn't get him. Otherwise, he put him there. Hi, Alex. Let's see. Rose Engine. That's the word I was looking for. Thanks, man. Dominic, it's unfortunate that now you have a bad taste with guilloche. However, it should. Yeah, no, you're right, Dominic. Dominic's point's a really good one, but what the other part of it is that when I hear these, I don't know, these sort of self-appointed connoisseurs sticking their nose up at a stamped guilloche on an FP Journe and praising some piece of junk that's got a pretty face, I find it gives me the willies, quite frankly. Dom, you're right. You're 100% right on that. Well, yeah, John, Johnny, it's a good point. I think the there are extraordinary dials, but when you're making 100 watches, uh, with the same outcome. I mean, you want them all to be the same, and you want them to be the same quality. It's a little different than these, $100,000 watches. That's another thing. The whole point that Lurique has had is to get high quality centered around the horology, and so that should dominate everything. In other words, it's sort of the base on which the entire watch should be centered. The other part of it is so much of the dial is fantastic. Like I said, the chapter ring, hour chapter ring, and a second chapter ring, the way the numbers are, it really is gorgeous. And it's sort of like the guilloche is so, at least on the one that I got, it's so shallow and you can't even see it. And so it doesn't look so bad. I took a picture of it in the good light. I said, "Oh my God, I see what they're talking about." And so we're dealing with the only people who are not acting professionally. So they're going to keep getting thunder in their ears until they get this thing right. And I just, like I said, though, but going back to the whole point of this is that if our values were centered elsewhere, I think we would have said, "Oh, well, we can get the thing stamped," and we could have. And I wish we had, but we had to be special, and well, that's not bad either. Hello, Dartmouth. What do I think about Longines? I tell you, I gotta tell you, I really like Longines. Um, anyway, Abdul, gotta, we're gonna have to talk later, Abdul. You had some really important things for me. I just been sort of coming out of all of this other stuff. So yeah, we need to talk, man. Yeah, Smoko, but Wooten Lannon, is his watches are they're going around for $200,000 and $300,000, and he owns the Guilloche maker because of that, his stuff gets a lot of attention. And so that's the way it is. Hey, Angus, how you doing? Guilloché age isn't horology. Good. But I think the craft itself is worthwhile. I'm not saying that. This is what I'm saying is that when you have a simple guilloché pattern, and the difference between having it done with a stamp versus having it done with a CNC or having it done by hand, those differences, Angus, was like 100, 1,000, 5,000. Those were the per watch. And so it's like, if that's the thing that you become hung up on, because what we had really, the idea was that here we had a watch, Etude #1, that was turned out wonderfully well. Agenor improved the movement on it, and so we thought, okay, everything in Etude #2, but so we're going to have a guilloché. That's going to be the crowning glory. Well, something happened, and as a result, we ended up with this. We're in this god awful thing we're trying to solve. But the idea of that this becomes a dominant feature of the watch, and again, we're not talking about $100,000, $200,000 watches, and that's what they're starting to demand for watches that happen to have also really great guilloché. The fact that all of these other guys use them is not the point. I wish it were. No, you guys, Smoko, you're missing a point. The point is that, yeah, guilloché is fine. Not a problem with it. It's done right, but it's in terms of the resources that go into a watch. Not saying it's not important, but I'm saying is that your resources can be done. Like if you have your guilloché done in one way, stamped, versus done with a CNC, it's a factor of 10. All right. And then to hear these self-appointed, people who think they know a lot. I know Agnes does, but not Agnes. Yeah, Agnes. Or is it Angus? It's one of the two. Is that you can really get yourself tied up in a knot. Now, once you go through this, you can see this. But for someone to come along and say, that was done with a CNC versus some guy with a Rose engine working on it. And again, well, we can throw in a Salida, so we'll be fine about that. And that's what we're getting with the lower price, the more affordable ones. So it's like this is sort of the point I'm making, is that if you only have so many resources to create a watch, and you can create the not saying this is the whole thing, is that if you take a look at the dial with the gold numbers, the track on the chapter ring of the hour chapter ring, and the chapter ring for the small seconds. They're great. They really are. That's without the guilloché. Now, if you put the guilloché in the middle of that, that's supposed to be nice. Well, one way to do it is with a stamp, and it's not expensive and it's easy. So the overall value now, if the major use of your resources is on this is where misplacement and displacement of values are, I think, is when you substitute those for something less important. That's my view, okay? Now there's is that you can get tangled up in certain parts. Now, um, again, not the most important point isn't that you should have it or not, but rather when you have a limited number of resources to create a watch, where the where the most important aspect of those resources should be put. Now, if you have a simple dial, we could have had this same dial with just a sort of a flat color in there of any number of ones without any further decoration, and it still would look great. Or we could have it stamped, just like F.P. Journe has done on his watches, because he knows, I think his values are this is where the important part of the watch is. Hi, Kring. Hi, Greta. Is Vacheron Constantin pre-owned the best value among the Holy Trinity these days? Now, I'll tell you what the best value is, and I would say among the I wouldn't even buy a Patek Philippe after 2009. Um, I think of the other two, you have the Audemars Piguet versus Vacheron Constantin. I don't know. I think I'm just not sure. Someone put up on High Horology Lounge this morning a really great thing that had been discontinued by Patek Philippe, and it's the Gondolo. And they had a thing. It was very innovative what they did. They picked up this stuff from Brazilian designs and so forth. I was talking about it, talking about the movement they had and everything, and it's sort of like, wow, that's a really interesting story about it. And so I think the question is that which one of those is where you can get the best deal? I'm not sure. Probably overall, it probably would be a Vacheron Constantin. What I would get in a not even think twice about it, it would be an H. Moser. The reason for H. Moser uses they use the Strawman hairspring, and so it's sort of like that is part of the horology, not the decoration. Hi, Anonymous. There you go, Smoko. I think you got it. Hand painted dials from the monks. Now, what's that? I'm trying to think what it is. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of hand painted stuff. There's even there's some very good sort of, I guess I don't know if it's horology or simply micromechanics that some of these top guys like Sven Anderson and Antonio Perzuzio and some of these other guys, is that here you have this talent going in there making sort of mechanical porno. Okay, guys, listen, I guess that Johnny sent me the high sign that it's time for me to go. Anyway, yeah, Anonymous, is the video that I had give you some point about it. That's a good point you're making now. Oh, as far as your salary, It depends how crazy you are. That's all it is. There's no rule of thumb. I would go to a financial advisor for that. Anyway, guys, listen, thank you. This is what I have something set up for this afternoon for 4 o'clock New York time. I want to have a discussion with you guys on what your next watch is going to be. Okay, because I was thinking about that. After this, I don't want one anymore. Angus or Agnes, I wanted to. Uh, yeah, I agree with that. I have this wonderful, wonderful tourbillon, Chinese tourbillon, and it's not only is it inexpensive, but it really does have good horology, good everything about it. It's just affordable, and so I think you know it takes all kinds of stuff. But anyway, guys, I have got to go. This afternoon at 4 o'clock, if you're around, we can talk about what's your next watch. Anyway, in the meantime, take care and go stamp guilloché. We'll see you guys.